the speed that person is maintaining on the path. And that's what the monitoring piece. And that is what you have to focus. So just stay focused on the long-term objective of the company. And this is the most important thing. And someone even asked right now, how much time are we supposed to give as a mentor and everything? Be accessible, but not daily. If a mentee says that, can I have a call with you every 3 days, frequently, please don't do that. The moment you start doing that, because for a long-term objective, for my bigger call, strategic call, I need not talk to anyone on a day-to-day basis. I need not talk to him, every 3 days. It doesn't change, okay? But if a mentee starts talking to you that frequently, which means he has already dragged you into the execution of the business, okay? Or as a mentor, if you think that you are talking daily, you will never be able to look at the data that you have created. And every day you can't talk on the long-term objective. You can't talk about the big picture. So every day then you will talk, अच्छा आज क्या हुआ? ये week में क्या हुआ? Then you start talking very transactional. Numbers कितने आए? Rather than asking that why the performance has been like this, you will start talking numbers कितने आए? आज कितने नए client add किए? Those kind of questions you will start getting into and everything. So to avoid that, you don't meet daily, but you have to be accessible. Okay, and I'll give you an interesting analogy of that after here. But the important part is you have to be really accessible. Before we move to the next slide, just who do you see as the biggest mentor in real life? Can you give me some example of the greatest mentors of?
In mythological world, I think what Krishna played to Arjuna kind of.
Superb. Yeah. That's my next slide. What makes you say so?
He did not fight for him. He made him fight against his fear. He made him fight against his. So it was like there is a man.
So today in the Kurukshetra war, who was the most important person that everyone remembers? Krishna. How many people did he kill?
Zero.
That's the best example and that's the best guru for every mentor. Every time when I look at mentorship, I look at it, I reflect back and that's the biggest guru for me. And let's look at what that decision making and what was the approach taken by the mentor. We'll go to, and that's where we are saying that learning from Lord Krishna of mentoring. Yeah, Shraddha. Yes. I mentioned declutter. What is a better declutter than Bhagavad Gita? The entire Bhagavad Gita is only about bringing clarity to the objective. Just think about it. What was the state of Arjuna when Lord Krishna started, giving Gita Gyan? He was confused. There was a lot of clutter. He was confused between his emotions and he was confused between his objective. Complete confusion. Everything that Bhagavad Gita did was bringing that clarity. Just removing that clutter. And that is the role of a mentor. That first thing you do is remove all the clutter that is there in the mind of the client. And that's what happens when you meet startup and you ask them, what is your business? They will try to talk about 10 different things. I am doing this also, this also, this also. I am catering to this market, this market, this market. They talk about 15 things and then you realize, what is the core? What is the core? What is the objective? Where are you heading? What do you want to be? These are the questions they are not able to answer. It is your role as a mentor to bring that clarity. So declutter. Be there for Arjun until the end. Now here I would like to bring a distinguish. I'll just differentiate between two things. In the earlier I said be accessible, but not daily. Okay. In the war, it's a day-to-day war, but effectively he was there during the war. So you have to be accessible and he was there till the end objective was achieved. So as a mentor, if you are thinking that you are a short stint, if you have a very short stint and you will move out, only move out if that objective is achieved. Till the time that objective is achieved, don't move. Now think for a minute. And earlier examples which we gave of advisor, coach. Dronacharya was a coach. He taught Arjun how to fight. Vidur was an advisor. Okay? He told what was right, what was wrong, but he was not there in the war. Correct? Krishna was there in the war. Think about it, Krishna would have told Arjun to fight your war. शाम को 6 बजे आ जाना, सूर्यास्त के बाद बात करेंगे. Okay? They would have lost the war on the day one. So that is very important. Be there with your mentee. Next. Don't teach Arjun how to fight. In the entire war, Krishna never told Arjun कि bow and arrow ऐसे चलाते हैं. अभी ये वाला चलाओ, अभी ब्रह्मास्त्र चलाओ, अभी ये चलाओ. He never told him. So never tell your mentee कि what उसका जो business है उसको ऐसे execute करना है. It's not that Krishna didn't know. Okay? But he knew that Arjun was the best. Second, he didn't want to make Arjun dependent on each and every decision. So don't teach Arjun how to fight. Don't pick weapon. So one of you said that, why he was a mentor? Because he did not pick up weapon. In the entire war, except for threatening Arjun once, he never picked up weapon. Okay? What is weapon in the business parlance? It's the execution. Never tell your mentee, okay, this I will do it for you. Okay? ये करना है ठीक है, मैं आपको करके देता हूँ. Never ever tell that. Okay? That's execution. And this is something that I have learned from my past mistakes. So I'll be very candid that there were startups initially where I said, okay, this part I will handle it for you. And then I realized I got into the execution. And I had to pull myself out after a while. So that's one thing. So don't pick up the weapon. 360-degree view of the war. In the entire war, every soldier was fighting with a soldier. Maharathi was fighting with a Maharathi. Atirathi were fighting with an Atirathi. And to an extent, they only knew whom they were fighting with. Not a single person other than Krishna had a 360-degree view of the entire war, what was happening across the war. And this he could because he had not picked the weapon. Okay? So while you are working with your mentee, the startup, it is this thing that while he would, whatever he is saying, you keep yourself focused on the overall picture, the big picture, the 360-degree view. That is what if he misses out, then you can at least guide him towards that. And again, how do you guide him? You ask him questions. आपका ये कैसा चल रहा है? आपने ये देखा क्या? ये कैसा चल रहा है? Guide him, lead him to looking at those aspects. He's missing out on those things. So that's what 360-degree view. Don't let Arjun get distracted. As I told you earlier that, you have decided a path. The promoter has decided a path. Once that path is decided, okay, you ensure that he's not getting distracted for some small opportunities here and there. It is very easy. While you are on a path, so for example, there are companies I have seen doing extremely well on their own product during COVID, and they started thinking that is an opportunity, and they got distracted. Now there can be an opportunistic trade that you have done just to keep yourself afloat, cash flow during that period, but that cannot become your path. Okay? So whatever opportunities you have on the sidelines cannot become a part of your path, or else you will realize that you are not on your path. So, and there are so many examples in Kurukshetra where Krishna is ensured that Arjun doesn't get distracted. While he is also ensured that he gets distracted once because of the bigger picture, but still he ensured that he doesn't get distracted. He always mentioned that your final is Karna, and that is what aim that was consistently there Krishna had said. And this is the, again, a very, very important part that you have to understand. It is not your war. It is not your objective. Don't try to put your objective, your plans, your aspirations, your dreams as a part of the mentee's objective. That is not his objective. The war was of Arjun's. The objective was of Arjun's and not Krishna. So always ensure that you, and this happens because all of us come with a good experience. We would have done something in our life, and we have a habit. हमने ऐसे किया था. अरे हम ये कर सकते हैं, हम ये कर सकते हैं. That is your dream. Keep it to yourself. Okay? Understand what Arjun wants to do. What is his objective? And you have to ensure that he reaches his objective. Your role is not to change his objective as a mentor. So these are the clear learnings that we get from, and these are the best learnings, we could have got as a framework of mentoring. But the most important thing is, next, pick the right Arjun. Okay?
True.
Who is Arjun? Who is capable, who is receptive, and who had an intent. Duryodhan never felt the need of Arjun, of Krishna. Correct? And Bhim would not have been receptive to Krishna. If you look at from a capability point of view, Arjun and Bhim both were equally capable. Krishna stayed with Arjun because he knew that Arjun is someone who will be receptive, and Arjun had gone to Krishna that I need you. So when Duryodhan asked for Narayani Sena, Arjun asked for Krishna. So important is there is a need that he felt. There was an intent in Arjun that he wanted someone because he wanted to achieve his objective. Okay? And Arjun was capable. So any point of time when you are selecting your mentee, okay, that doesn't mean, and when I say capability, doesn't mean that you are not doing mentorship to someone who is not capable or who needs some help. He needs some help. Probably he will need some coaching. Okay? Then play a role as a coach. Then don't call yourself mentor for a while. First play a role of a coach, make him capable, and then play the role of a mentor. But if you are playing a role of a mentor, you need to pick your Arjun. So the most important thing in the mentorship, again, from what we learned from Kurukshetra, is that pick the right Arjun. So, these are the points that I wanted to put across to you as a framework, and this is something that all of us can relate to. We all know how it was happened. It's just that, we don't try to relate it to the current this thing. And it was very interesting, the first answer I got when I asked that who was the biggest mentor, you said Lord Krishna, and the points which you people made were absolutely the same. So, and if we always keep our learnings, if we take it from Kurukshetra, from Arjun, from Krishna, I think so we can be a good mentor. So that's the framework for mentoring. So, any questions you have? I think you also asked some questions in terms of how your engagements and all these things as a mentor you have to be. Someone asked that if when you invest in your mentee company. So again, it's a conflict of interest, not legally. Okay, but if you are able to keep the two roles separate, investor will ask performance. Mentor takes the promoter towards that performance. What is it that you want to do? That is one part. Second, if you are a mentor and you are working with a mentee, you will realize he will not be answerable to you as a shareholder or as an investor. Okay? So if you are able to separate these two roles, great. If you are not, play one. Okay. And trust me, we have been working with a lot of startups, and there are startups who really feel the need of a good mentor. They need. But my suggestion would be, once you start, through the MAARG portal, once you start and everything, or even outside when you are doing mentoring, first 15-20 days to really understand how eager is it. Just as a process, सब लोग mentor ले रहे हैं, मैं भी mentor ले लूँ, you know, all those things. Does he really feel the need? Set your expectations right. You tell him what is it that you will be doing. Because the way what I spoke about as a mentor, not every startup knows. Startups get confused between a mentor, an advisor, a director, or a coach, everything. So this is something, the first differentiation what we say, that coach, advisor and mentor. You will have to tell the startup, okay, this is the difference and I will play this role. Still you want to have me? That is one part. Second, not every time we will have same thought process. Okay? Are you okay? I will ask you difficult questions. Are you willing to answer that? So I think so the intent of the, which I said that pick the right Arjun. So the first 15 days when you are spending with a mentee, try to understand that there is a clear intent, and if you are able to bring that clarity, is there a fire in that person to achieve something? These two things are important. Then engagements can be, you know, independent. Everyone can have their own way of engagement, the time spent, everything. Don't spend too much time. Okay? Which I said that don't be accessible daily. You set a day. You want to do it once in a month. You want to do it twice in a month. Set that and make it a schedule. And the most important, the best way to know whether there is an intent or not, you will come to know if he doesn't change that schedule. अगर ये वाली meeting calendar में चली गई, then for him everything has to move around that. It should not be likely that आज नहीं हो पाएगा, नहीं ये week में थोड़ा सा अपने next week मिले क्या? If a mentee keeps changing your schedules of mentorship program, then you should understand that probably he doesn't realize the need of it so much. Okay, so ensure that that discipline is followed as a mentor. Yeah, open to questions.
What if say your mentee does not have execution experience? So a lot of these startup founders are freshers or people with just 2-3 years of experience. So at that point you have two options: either you become a coach instead of a mentor, or you can find him someone or her someone who has that execution experience. So what is your suggestion?
So again, guide him towards that. See, if he doesn't have an execution capability, as I said, either you become a coach. But becoming someone who doesn't have an execution of a business itself, okay, then first advice has to be, take a step back, get that capability, or get a co-founder. So a lot of time we always say that you should have a co-founder, okay? And co-founder in a startup is always like finding a co-travel in an adventure journey. Someone should have that passion, someone should have that complementing skill set, and someone who has to be extremely positive and a risk-taking appetite. So you help them and first help him get that person. Okay? You need not, you can just tell him what could be the kind of person that you will require. Guide him on all those things. Let him first find someone. Or you say that I am not mentor for a while. First 6 months I will work as a coach with you. I'll help you understand how the execution goes. But it becomes a bit difficult. Okay, to work with someone who doesn't have an execution capability. Okay, when you say execution capability, it's not necessarily that someone has got an experience of delivering. When you say 2 years, 3 years, fresher, doesn't mean that person has got an experience of delivering in the past. But execution, he knows what are the nitty-gritties of the execution. Who is a good guy who is good at execution? He should know, okay, if I'm taking this path, these are the kind of challenges which will come. These are the obstacles which will come, and this is the methodology I have to overcome this thing. If he has that clarity, he can still be a good execution guy. You can play a role of a mentor. Okay. If he doesn't have that clarity also, then you will have to probably either pull out or work as a coach first, or help him guide a co-founder.
Yeah, an extension of the same one. First of all, thank you very much. This was a great framework. Will it alter a bit based on at the stage the startup is, whether it's at a concept stage or it is a scale stage? Will any of these principles go for a change?
No, because as I said that at any stage you are not answering anything. You are putting the questioning framework. It's just that your questions will change.
Okay.
What aspects? And See, this is when I say the objective. So one is the end goal, the final objective. Okay. But every time they will have a milestones. That first, till the time we reach here, this is my first objective.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you will have to monitor, and then as a mentor, you need to know that in the first phase, my leading questions will be towards this. So today, let's assume I'll tell first a company saying that acquire those capabilities. That is the first way where I will lead him to, which he asked that if there is no execution skill, but again going towards that capability. Then once the capability kind of leading questions are done with, the next stage, now I will start to expand his horizon. Well, I will start my leading questions would be, how do you scale up faster? Okay. So without telling him that now I will be focusing on scale up, your leading questions will be such that they will start thinking on those frameworks. So your questions will motamoti not, your approach will not change, your questions will change.
Thank you.
Questions? Great.
So there is question from online attendee.
Yeah.
Will we mentor a founder or a startup, which may have multiple founders?
So for me, the leader, whether it is single or the group of leader, that bunch is the one whom I am mentoring. Which I told, I am not mentoring the business. I am mentoring the leader. I am working on the business through the leader.
So there is one more question. What should a mentor do when a startup is not able to progress? And there is no progress.
So you have to identify what is the reason for not progressing. Is it the lack of implementation, receptiveness? Then discontinue. It's okay. Because then as I'm saying that there are other who need you more. Okay, so if the problem is the receptiveness, if the problem is the capabilities, then the way I answered him, that you help him identify. So you have to, it's an assessment you do of the mentee and you tell him that this is the skill set which you are lacking. So let's first get this kind of so that the execution can move faster. The progress is there. Okay, so you need to first identify the reason for the progress. If the intent is the reason, just move out. Okay, because that's something that you cannot change. Okay, if capability is the reason, then help him identify and understand what are the gaps, and help him first address those gaps and then move ahead in that road. So that's how you keep monitoring.
There is one more question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to ask one question. So how many interactions, what would be the mode of interaction? Should we insist that yes, we will interact only with founder or co-founder, or we should also have some more people in the conversation? Because our Indian founders are so street smart, they will come up with their own team and say, "Sabne sun liya, sab apna apna kaam kar lena."
Superb question. Very good question, and that's something which is very, very important. Only work with founders and co-founders. The day you start working with the team, okay? The day you start working with the team, trust me, your role will change from the mentor.
Yes.
Okay? As a mentor, just work with, and that's the reason I said that he just stayed with Arjun. He did not talk to any of his soldiers. He did not talk to any of his senapatis.
And that brings me to another question.
Yeah.
When we say, okay, fine, I'll interact only with you, not with your team member, then we face revenge ratings. So whom should we report such incidences?
No,
When
from
founders, from founder, you treat you bad, right? If I come with 3 of my team members and you say, okay, fine, Chintan, I'm not going to speak to any of your team member, we'll have a one-on-one only, then I'll say, okay, ठीक है भूषण, अभी तो देख मैं तेरे को rating 2 ही दूंगा.
So okay, so I think so. Let's not. So I understand your
Allow
question.
me to finish.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
is there a way wherein we can write such violation or such street smart threats to any of the team member over here?
Okay, good. So 2 parts. The second part probably Nazia and Shambhavi can answer that part, the rating part, because on the mark thing. But in general, first thing as a mentor, never worry about those ratings. Okay. Second is that which I told you that first 15 days when you are interacting, set the expectations right and be clear. Even before onboarding, you be very clear. I am going to work with founders and co-founders. If you have 5 co-founders, I will work with 5 co-founders. But that's a bunch who will come with me. Okay. But if you tell me, my leadership team below us, my management team, will you interact? No. That's not the role of a mentor. Okay, so that is something that and the reason I am saying is that, and we have seen it in the past. The moment you start doing that, okay, the relationship between you and the promoter and the way he will look at it now will change. Then next time what will happen, you know, sir मैं थोड़ा travel कर रहा हूँ, आप team के साथ बात कर लोगे क्या?
Exactly.
Okay, these things will start coming up, so don't do that. And second is that objective किसका है? Objective, final objective किसका है? Purpose किसका है? Founder का. You will talk only to the founder. So just ensure, that's a very good question. So this is something which is important. This happens.
This happens when we get into the field.
Correct. So with regards to the rating and everything, probably the Startup India team can guide you. What is there a way where you can put across these things?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Suppose if you find that the founder or the co-founder is actually working with more than one mentor.
Yes.
But then what happens is it's like using one against the other.
Correct.
Comes out with their own ideas and then you get caught into a situation where you sometimes don't have an answer.
Correct.
What do you do in such cases? Do you take a step back and say goodbye?
So two things. See, a person can have multiple mentors if they are functional mentors. Okay. When it comes to strategic, okay, you will have to keep your mentoring method the way you are doing it. Keep asking those questions. Let him do it. Someone else is coming. That person is also giving his guidance. Finally, it is up to the mentee to decide which one to follow. Okay. Even if he is not following the methodology that you are talking about, the approach that you have discussed and everything, try to understand with the mentee why is he. See, your role is, as I said, that your role is not to take decision, but you will have to keep asking questions that why do you think you have taken this decision? Probably there can be a different perspective that as a mentor I will learn. Okay. Keep asking that. But at a point you realize that the problem is that now, just for a formality's sake, he has kept this mentor, but actually सब कुछ कर रहा है वहाँ पे. Then you very gladly you say that I think that someone else is probably adding a lot more value to you. Okay, and this probably is taking away some time of your this thing. So might as well be discontinued. That's okay. Okay. Thank you everyone.
For appreciation. Heartfelt thanks. Wonderful session.
Thank you so much, Bhushan, for summarizing it and giving a very good perspective of how do we structure it. And obviously, are you going to be here after the session?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'll interact with you. Great. So, unfortunately, there is no one to introduce myself. No one to introduce me, so I'm going to do it myself. Shubha, if we can go to directly to the slide, yeah.
Sorry?
No, my deck.
Okay.
Great. So our second segment is essentially going to be around how do we as mentors help our mentees in raising a round of capital, right? And it's a very interesting topic. And before we deep dive into it, I will quickly introduce myself. My name is Vikrant, and I run a company called Fund Enable. We are predominantly an investment bank specialized for Series A onwards transactions for technology startups. Shubha, if you can go to the next slide. So, so far we would have done transactions totaling more than 250 crores. Some of the latest transactions include Work India, e-Motorrad, and I'll talk about those transactions with you. I have this great opportunity to work with a lot of incubators in the country. And I sit on the committees of around 7 incubators today when it comes to deployment of seed funding. Work with many more incubators because we have a business line that actually works with incubators. Prior to starting Fund Enable, I used to be a part of a fund called Springboard Ventures, where I predominantly did consumer-focused technology businesses investing. And before that, I used to be a part of JP Morgan's investment banking team. Almost 7 to 8 days a month, I'm actually teaching. I visit various B schools across the country and incubators and take up courses. The only thing that I know is how do we raise capital. Thanks to the gentleman sitting here, Prasad, who's going to speak next. Last couple of months, I got an opportunity to train 90 incubator CEOs in actually helping them in deploying seed funding through various schemes like Startup India Seed Fund, Nidhi SSP, etc. Because there's so much funding available now, even with the incubators for investing in startups, that capability building has to be done at the incubator level as well. So we did a 3-cluster program to help incubator CEOs to deploy seed funding. I was fortunate to be a part of Cornell's 60 program, which is a specialized program for entrepreneurs. It's like MBA in entrepreneurship by Cornell, fully funded by the government, our government, right? And that cohort actually has added a lot of value to me personally in terms of connects, especially on the investor side. Some of the institutions that I work with include IIM Ahmedabad CIE, IIM Bangalore, ISB, XLRI, Exceed, EDII, SPJMR. I take a course in entrepreneurship. While I'm teaching, I'm also learning. So I'm currently doing my PhD in venture capital. What I'm going to actually talk is purely, my learning of the past 10, 12 years. So take me with a big stone of salt, if not pinch, because that's my experience, right? And it may or may not hold true when it comes to deploying those same strategies. But I would also like to hear from you, because when you walked in, a lot of people said that, hey, I help startups in raising capital. So you should contribute to this session predominantly as well, right? If you go to the next slide. Great. So, yeah, go next. So just a couple of days ago, we announced a deal where we raised around $12 million for a company called Work India by a bunch of investors. This is the 7th round of funding that I've done for this particular company. It's a Bangalore-based startup. And around a month ago, we raised a round of capital for a company called eMotorrad. Next slide. Where we raised around 24 crores for funding for this very interesting electric cycle brand. This is a company based out of Pune, right? So these are a couple of recent transactions that me and my team have done, right? Go to the next slide. So what is happening, when I am personally and my team is spending time with startups, what is happening is first-time founders are finding it really difficult to raise a round of capital, because the single largest reason for that is they don't have the knowledge of fundraising. For the lack of better words, I always say this, for the lack of better words, what differentiates men from boys in this fundraising game is actually knowledge of fundraising. People who have done it as a part of startups, they used to work at some startups, they learned how to do it, then started and found it very easy to raise a round of capital. So at the very basic center of it, the challenge is actually the knowledge of fundraising. If I ask a question that, hey, how are shares issued? When you raise a round of funding, how are shares issued? How does dilution work? How will you calculate your valuation? What is a drag along clause in a term sheet? Founders don't have an understanding of that because they have not done it, right? So just because they don't know. A lot of times, business models or businesses that are okay but know how to raise a round of capital have actually been able to raise money against those who are really good but have no understanding of the fundraising process, right? So that's where again there is a lacuna and there's an opportunity for us as mentors to contribute, right? Second is, in this early stage fundraising where we are talking about 2 crore, 3 crore, 5 crore of capital raising, the fee pool is not very exciting for us as investment bankers. So predominantly you make success fees in this business, and on a 2 crore fundraise, how much success fee will you make? Right? 3 lakhs, 2 lakhs, 1 lakh. So that's not significant enough for institutes, large organizations to come in and work with startups. Everyone wants to do Series A onwards. No one wants to do really very early stage, right? And that's also a way for us as mentors to kind of an opportunity for us, right, to help them raising a round of capital.
That's why I'm not saying to anyone.
Most CAs, although they are experts in finance, tax, etc., may not always be experts in equity fundraising. I'm an engineer and an MBA, nothing against CAs, don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily that if you're a CA, which means that you are great at equity fundraising, right? It has its own, nuances. It has its own processes that we use to raise that funding. So therefore, again, there is a need for someone to help, right? And the last thing which I've observed, access to investors is the biggest problem, and predominantly access to relevant investors is a challenge. And I'm going to focus on that. I have a great business plan. I've got amazing mentoring on how should I create a business plan, how should I pitch, what should I show as financial projections. But boss, can you connect me to the relevant investors? Right? There's a huge gap in that connecting to the investors. Right? And a combination of these four things actually establishes the need for us to step in and provide relevant advice, mentoring, whatever you may call it, to these early stage entrepreneurs, and we can make a big difference. Right? Shubda, if you can go to the next slide. So, like I said, good startups are struggling to raise a round of capital because of these reasons. Next. Next. So, I was just reading this that last year, 2022, and the calendar year, and these numbers have to be consolidated. In the calendar year, we raised around $24 billion of funding in the early stage ecosystem. This number was much higher in 2020, right? Last year, in fact, this number has fallen, and the fallen number is actually $24 billion. Now, what does this number mean? If I break it down, the number, if you kind of look at it, it means around $450 million in a week, which predominantly means 70 crore rupees on a daily basis. We are a part of a country today which, in the down cycle, I would say, raises 70 crore rupees on a daily basis as startup founders, right? We are going into the funding winter. Everyone is talking about, hey, 2023, very difficult to raise a round of capital. Next. Even if we actually, cut this number down to 50%, we still have a pool of around 20 to 30 crore rupees that we can actually raise as startup founders on a daily basis, right? And that is the kind of opportunity which is today available, right? Next. But what we have to, next. So what we have to actually understand is, this number is only a statistic for us if we are not able to get access to that 20 crores on a daily basis, right? फिर वो newspaper में पढ़ने के लिए अच्छा है. तो क्या करें? How do we ensure that our mentees actually become a part of this India, which is actually raising 25, 30, 40 crore rupees on a daily basis, right? How do we ensure that? Is there a playbook? Is there a mantra that we can actually deploy and say that, hey, you know what, now you will be able to kind of raise a round of capital? So, in my experience, there are three primary things that are required to get access to this pool of capital. And those three things are very, very simple, right? Next. I really hate this when someone else is actually taking control of your tech, right? It's can't help. So the three things are, first is, we have to really understand is the business fundable, right? Not every business is fundable from a venture capital standpoint, right? There are certain things that a venture capital investor looks for, right? A local kirana store has everything possible that makes it a very good business. It has repeat customers, it has good cash flows, it has shown good profitability. But is that a VC fundable business? No. What makes a business venture capital fundable? A lot of times people are chasing VC money without understanding that, hey, you know what? I am not those types who would actually raise a round of capital per se. So first we need to understand, is the business even fundable, right? VC fundable, right? Capex heavy businesses typically wanting to, people coming and saying that I want to set up an electric vehicle plant. I have this great, a prototype which I have created. I want to set up a plant. On day one, I require 7 crores of funding, right? Now this is money which you're requiring for capex. Always understand the difference between banks and VCs. Banks fund your balance sheets. VCs predominantly fund your P&L. What is the difference between that? If I have to make capex, right, which is sitting on my balance sheet as assets, a venture capital fund will not come in at an early stage and give you money to fund your balance sheet. Similarly, go to a bank and say that I need 1 crore rupees for spending on Facebook advertising. The bank manager will not understand what you're talking about, right? When your expansion is sitting on your P&L, which means what? You need to hire a team, you need to actually spend on technology, you need to spend on customer acquisition. All of these are costs sitting on your P&L, right? So when your expansion is essentially driven by front loading the expense on your P&L, that is when VCs come into picture, right? So first we have to understand the difference between the two sources of finance, right? Then what kind of things do VCs look for? I'm going to share a sheet with you, which is like a cheat sheet to quickly figure out whether this business is fundable or not. We don't have the time to, for me to take you through it. But things like scalability, things like, you need a proof of concept, things like very strong team, all those things are required for any startup to raise a round of venture capital. And believe me, that matrix which I'm going to share is not a matrix which will help you gauge a good business, right? It will help you to gauge whether a business is fundable or not, right? So my father runs a company which has very low skilled people, which is making a commodity, which has no entry barrier, but he's running this business for 30 years, very profitable, right? It's a good business, but it's not a VC fundable business, right? So the framework I'm sharing will be predominantly applicable for is the business fundable per se. So helping our mentees identify whether my business is fundable or not. Second is having a very detailed understanding of the process of fundraising, and the process of fundraising is much beyond pitching, right? It starts there, but fundraising is not about only pitching or creating a business plan. Various aspects like cap tables, valuation, understanding of term sheet, preparing for due diligence. Okay, all of these are part of the capital raising process. And do we understand, or do the founders understand the fundraising process holistically is the question that we have to address, right? Solve for them. And obviously we will have to learn that first, and we will have to actually, see how it is done first, right? So going beyond preparing business plan or giving them guidance of how to create a great business plan and how to pitch is the process of fundraising, right? And the third thing is relevant investor connections. And I need to actually give them foot in the door to the right set of investors, right? Now, if we pack these three things together, my business is fundable, I understand the process of raising a round of capital, and I have relevant investor connects. This is the starting point for a great, I would say, fundraising strategy or process, right? The probability of success would be really high. I have great investor connects, but my business is not fundable. You won't be able to go ahead, right? My business is fundable, but hey, you know what? If someone is, when I'm going to sit and talk about valuation, I have no idea. I'm not going to be able to give confidence to the investor on how will we exit. Again, things will fall off, right? So a combination of these three things become the successful fundraising, strategy for any mentee of ours, right? We will quickly get into the details of each, right? So for is your business fundable? Next slide. We have created a matrix, and I'm going to share this with you. I'm not going to discuss it in detail, but over the past 10, 12 years, whatever conversations and deals that we did, right? There were certain things that the investor always looked for, right? This is the 80-20. 80% of the times, investors were focusing on these 7 or 8 points, which all of us are aware of. It's just that we need to kind of put it together and gauge a startup basis these points, right? So the first and the foremost was actually the team. I used to always think before getting into the VC industry was that fundraising is all about finance, Excel sheets, etc. Later I understood it is all about people. It is all about finding the right founders, right? And I would put it people before innovation from an investment standpoint, right? There are a lot of innovative products which are available today across colleges. When I go to engineering colleges, we have so many innovative products. But will this founder be able to travel the journey from that product to P&L? Which means, क्या ये इसका 100 करोड़ रुपए का धंधा बना पाएगा? Product is amazing. There is no dearth of innovation in the country today. What is the challenge? The challenge is taking that innovation to a business, right? Making a business out of it. And that is where the skill set, like Bhushan mentioned, execution abilities, and it does not always mean number of years of experience. It is that gauging that skill set of, can this founder actually make it a large business, right? And a lot of focus is on that per se, right? So relevant skill sets, complementary skill sets are two important critical aspects in a team. Relevant skill sets, okay, I'm running an edtech venture. Ideally I need co-founding members from content, technology, and customer acquisition, because these are three key pillars of an edtech business, right? Complementary skill sets. All three founders, all of them great at product development. Product banne ke baad, who's going to actually sell it, right? So there, the complementary skill sets is actually lacking, right? So team becomes extremely critical. And one more learning is, great co-founding teams, and you would have observed it as mentors, is more of love marriage than arranged marriage. If I have to find a good co-founder, going to LinkedIn and saying that, hey, I'm coming up with startup, looking for co-founders, may not work. There is some history. Hey, we used to be in the same college, or we were colleagues before. Some working history gets people together, and then co-founding teams are, formed, right? And these are the small nuances which are actually checked. And obviously things like scalable business model, value proposition. Scalable business model, very quickly, what is scalability? Scalability in our mind is just multiplying the business, right? But from a venture capital standpoint, what is scalability? First 5 rupees of revenue, I had to put in 3 rupees of capital, right? Next 5 rupees of revenue, incremental 5 rupees of revenue, again I have to put in 3 rupees of capital. The next incremental 5 rupees of revenue, again I have to put in 3 rupees of capital. If that is the business, then the business in VC terms is not scalable. This business can grow, but every time when there is equivalent amount of capital required for incremental amount of revenue, right? Then the business is not scalable from a venture capital standpoint, and that's why we see that platform businesses, technology businesses have received more funding, right? Value proposition, all of us are aware. Proof of concept today. I will tell you, in the market, there was a time I used to intern with Mumbai Angels, okay, some 10 years back. That time, business plans which were only on paper were also getting funded. A great team, nothing is there, but a great business plan, funding used to happen. Today, investors are asking for proof of concept. And what is proof of concept? Forget about revenue, forget about users. We need customers, we need revenue, and we need revenue at positive unit economics. This unit economics is very important. Gross margins or contribution margins or whatever you may call it, right? So it's not just, boss, get revenue. It's revenue at positive contribution margin or unit economics, right? So if you look at this matrix, this is what covers predominantly what kind of businesses are actually fundable per se, right? And obviously we can discuss it later as well in terms of what in value proposition is exciting today for investors and so on and so forth, right? I'm going to send an email to all of you with all these, templates which you can use to kind of apply to your startup founders, right? Next. So coming to the next part, the process of fundraising, complete understanding of process of fundraising. In my mind, these are the 8 steps that are typically there when you raise a round of capital, right? It all starts with preparing business plans and financial models, right? And pitching to the investors. Then we actually talk to the relevant investors. We discuss cap tables, which is the whole dilution structure. That if I am looking to raise, 1 crore for 10%, how many shares do I need to issue? At what share price, etc. That is the whole dilution structure, right? How do we define valuation? Very important. If I get an opportunity of another 1 hour someday, I will teach you how to actually value companies in early stages. And today, a lot of deal structures are used at early stages. You would have heard of a convertible debenture or a safe note or a convertible note or a CCPS. What is this? At a very early stage, when you don't have enough data points to value a startup, you postpone the problem of valuation by saying that let's put money, let's wait for the next round of funding to happen. Basis that round, we will decide the valuation for this seed level round or first round, right? In fact, the Startup India Seed Fund is actually saying that you have to invest in the form of a convertible debenture, right? So if any of you have read the overall document, you will see that this debenture, convertible debenture, is now even getting very interesting at the seed funding which is coming through the government schemes as well, right? So this actually helps us in postponing the problem of valuation or a lot of dilution at early stage. And this is used a lot today in the early stage ecosystem. So any founder who's coming to me for the first round of funding, I tell them that as far as possible, try and do a convertible, because we don't have enough data points to value your business. At a prototype stage, what valuation, 10 crores, 15 crores, how do you decide? Right? There is no way to decide. So you just use these instruments and recommend these instruments to early stage founders first. Then we discuss the term sheet. Then we talk about the due diligence, where most of the deals follow. Right? This is one step where, which is the most, I would say, unglamorous, non-glamorous step in the fundraising process, but the most important, right? Because startups are not, they don't have an understanding of what due diligence is, right? And that is where delays happen. Money in the bank gets delayed because of due diligence. Post that, we sign the shareholders agreement, and then we do certain post-funding compliances like issuance of share certificates, etc. This entire 7-8 step journey for a sizable round takes anywhere between 3 to 6 months, right? I have worked on transactions that have taken 13 months. 6 months is, I tell founders that, boss, if you start today, assume that money is not going to come for the next 6 months, right? Because a lot of times it's not about pitching and finding the relevant investors, but it's the process. Term sheet, shareholders agreement, valuation, all of that takes time. This is where again we can, guide and mentor them and bring them to the right, I would say, focal point and ensure that the deal happens, right? Obviously, all of this would require more, time, and we can deep dive into it at a later date in terms of what everything really means, right? Next. The point that I'm going to kind of touch upon now is the right approach to reach out to the investors, and how can you be the focal point for giving investor access to our mentees, right? And this is very, very interesting, okay? So go to the next slide. So what most of the founders today are using is a spray and pray approach. I go to LinkedIn, whoever is saying investor on their LinkedIn page, I'm writing an email. Or I'm finding a database of investors and I'm shooting out cold emails to investors. Try and understand, we are not selling credit cards. We are actually looking to raise a round of capital for our business, right? The spray and pray approach, or a pure mass cold email approach in fundraising, as per me, does not work, right? Does not mean that cold calling doesn't work at all, but as per me, this is a very, the spray and pray approach is not the right approach for raising a round. The right approach actually, and this is what I call as the false start, that we think that we've started fundraising, but we have actually not started fundraising for our companies, right? Next, the right start actually is targeting investors basis a certain criteria, right? We have to actually make a very tight criteria and ensure that we only reach out to the right set of investors. And what can be the criteria? The starting point for the criteria can be the sector and the ticket size. Agri-tech startup looking to raise 50 lakh rupees. Can we find which are those 5 or 6 investors that are right now investing in agri-tech and whose ticket size is somewhere around 50 lakh to 1 crore, right? And this also changes, right? Because in investors, there is a flavor of the season, which means there are some sector-specific investors. The sector-agnostic investors today might be looking at agri-tech. Tomorrow might be looking at, something else, right? So that intel on which is the right investor for me right now, basis my ticket size, is very important. And then we can add layers to that. And I'm going to tell you with help of examples, very quick examples, are recent fundraisers. Go to the next slide, Shubhra. So, next. So go to the next. So here is a company that I want to talk about, which is a very interesting company, which falls under the social impact venture, the kind of company which also has a social impact. What is the definition of social impact? It is creating bottom of the pyramid impact. People at the bottom of the pyramid are getting actually, are earning livelihood through this company, right? Next. So this company is actually called Under the Mango Tree. It's a Bombay-based brand started by a female called Vijaya Patsala. That company helps in increasing the income of the farmers. So what she says is, my company is actually helping farmers in increasing their income. How? They go to farmers and install bee boxes, honey bee boxes, right? Next. These bee boxes actually are installed at a farm. So let's say let's say we go to Bihar and there is a lychee farmer, right? So we install this bee box on this field of lychee farmers. Bees foster pollination. So you were producing 100 kgs of lychee, suddenly you will start producing 110 kgs of lychee. So there is an additional 10 kgs which you are making just because of bees on your field, right? So more money. The byproduct of this is honey. So this company buys honey from these farmers and sells it as a very premium, honey brand. It's kind of bottled and it's across Nature's Basket and all the gourmet stores, right? Now we were trying to raise a round of capital for this company, right? And we were trying to figure out what are the key themes, what are the major themes, right? So one is, this is a food/agri opportunity, which is, let's say, looking to raise 3 crores, led by a woman co-founder, right? Social impact, has social impact. So these are some of the key themes, right? What we did was, purely through secondary Google searches, we tried to find out that which are the investors in the country that are interested in investing in social impact, agri, 3 crore rupees is the ticket size, food, agri is their sector focus, not using any database, nothing, purely by reading, right? And what we were able to find out was, there were around 8 or 10 investors, 8 or 10 investors that actually fit this particular category, right? The likes of Acumen, C4D, Mentera, etc. Then we double click on the portfolio. How does the portfolio look like? What are their ticket sizes? Does my specific story fit well, right? And then we decide that, okay, these are the 5 investors which are really relevant for me. Within no time, we were able to raise a round of capital from a fund called Acumen, right? So this company got funded by Acumen, and believe me, the entire investor reach out was a very simple process where we spoke to maybe 5 or 6 investors at max, right? And the targeting was so good that the hit ratio was really high because we were giving what really investor wanted, instead of just going out and randomly writing to everyone saying that I'm looking to raise a round of capital. So this company went on to raise 3 rounds of capital purely from social impact investors. The point that I'm trying to drive home is that in capital raising, the relevant reach out is extremely critical, right? And that is where we can come in guiding our founders that, boss, you know what, stop randomly meeting hundreds of investors and shooting out emails. Is this investor right for you? In fact, we go a step ahead, and when we are talking to an investor, we include a slide or two about their portfolio company and if there is some synergy between us and their portfolio, right? So that makes the conversation even more meaningful. Go to the next slide. So again, certain specific slides you have to include for every investor. Like in this case, how does the opportunity impact the bottom of the pyramid is a very important step, right? Are we measuring that impact? When we are saying we are an impact opportunity, are we measuring the impact? How are we measuring the impact? Those kind of conversations need to be added. So maybe every investor that we are talking to, there are few slides which you keep on changing per se, right? Next slide, Shubha. What we have started providing, of course, is instead of you doing the entire research, you can just go to fundenable.com and feed in a few details, and you get to know that, okay, these are 4 or 5 investors that are relevant for you, right? And we also provide that connect to those investors through the platform, and obviously, you can visit the platform and know more, right? Next. What one big learning that I've come across is that the universe of investors is far larger than what we think and what we read on your story and what you do, right? Going beyond the sequoias and the matrices of the world is actually what we need to do today. You have to really dig deeper and deeper. There are investors who have not even, they've not even come out with one single press release of their investment and still are investing. Just because we are not aware, we've not been able to kind of crack those investors, right? And this one learning came from our recent transaction, next, which is a Pune-based company that I spoke about, eMotorrad, which is an electric cycle company. It's basically a cycle with a battery, and you can actually pedal, you can actually also accelerate. And the main market is US and Europe, right? A brilliant set of founders, great product, but we were really struggling to raise a round of capital. Every time we reached out to investors, the investors actually came up with, next slide, bunch of questions for us, right? And those questions were that, hey, you are a manufacturing heavy business, right? And we don't typically, go and fund startups that are asset heavy. So we don't want to go ahead and invest in you. The Indian market looks very, very small. Indian e-bike market is looking very small. We don't have a deep understanding of this particular sector. So we don't have a prior experience of investing in EV. So we are not comfortable. And for good 6-7 months, we were not able to raise a round of capital at all, right? And that's when we started thinking, what do we do? This is a good business, right? It deserves capital, great founders, great business. How do we actually raise a round of capital for this company? And that is where, next, we went beyond the general names. And when we did our deep research, we figured out that globally there are funds who are set up to actually only invest in electric mobility, right? There are funds set up by large corporates, automobile companies, or they are investing from their balance sheets, and they are putting money to support these electric, EV startups, right? And they understand the challenges, right? So EV2 Ventures, Green Frontier, Jaguar in Motion Ventures, all of these guys, I was also not connected to them, right? And this is the time when we made the first time connect that, hey, we have a great startup from India here. Do you want to invest? And that is where we were actually able to crack a deal with this fund called Green Frontier Capital. This might be their India's second or first investment, but they understood it was basically a fund set up predominantly for net zero, right? Green companies, right? And this company actually invested 24 crore rupees of, capital. They pumped in 24 crore rupees. The biggest learning there was that, you have to actually go out and globally to a lot of investors, then find relevant investors and actually raise a round of capital from them, even at an early stage, right? Top 10 investors, top 15 investors in the country today. The universe is much beyond that. That is what we have to understand. And that is what we have to make our mentees understand. Right? One final piece of learning, next slide, is that in today's market, right, now that we are moving into a tapered funding climate, in today's market, strategic investors can be very good fit even at early stages over financial investors. What do I mean by that? What is strategic investors? Large companies who can find our business really relevant from an investment standpoint. They may not be a venture capital fund, but still there is a relevance from a investment standpoint per se. That can actually be a very good fit, right? And I'm going to give you an example. Next slide. So we were working with this company, very good company, again a medical device company in India. I've realized that if you are a medtech founder, your respect, the kind of challenges that you face to kind of get across a medical device, right, is large. Upfront investment is huge. So this company had created a great device, which is actually a remote ICU device, which can work without the need of a SIM card. Directly communicates through satellites, monitors almost 16, 17 critical parameters. Great, fitment with army, on navy, on aircrafts, etc. Right? It's a remote ICU device. Now, when we were looking to raise money for this founder, next slide, a lot of challenges came up. The biggest challenge was show us traction. The point to the investor was that for a medical device company, to even get to traction, I need 6-7 crores. How can I show you traction, right? It's not possible. B2G is something that a lot of VCs typically don't, like. If your business is predominantly B2G, then a lot of investors shy away from that, right? Now the story is changing, but this is how it was typically happening. And because of that, we were not able to raise a round of capital. What we did, again, who can be the right investor? Forget VCs. Who can be the right investors? So we went to the army website, defense website, and we saw defense website has list of vendors, right? List of vendors that they give, that we work with. We said, why don't we actually go to a mid-size or a large vendor of army, right? And we started speaking to vendors who can be great fitment for us, both from the medical device standpoint as well as from the go-to-market, because foot in the door in the army, right? And there is one company which makes optical sensors and electronic components for army. They understood their product. They understood this product. They clearly saw an application in army, and they knew how to crack the defense orders, right? And this company decided to actually invest, right? Not a venture capital fund, never invested in startups, never invested, but found this very relevant and pumped in the initial capital required to take the business to the next level, right? The founder did not have an option, because if I have to go to the next level, I need that 6-7 crore rupees of capital, right? So two important learnings is, obviously relevant investors, all of us know, but beyond that, go beyond the names, usual names, and strategics, especially in this market, can be very good for raising a round of capital, right? Next, the last point that I really want to make is that what I have observed, and again, like I said, this is purely my learning. Don't take me with a big stone of salt. Is I have always observed that what gets you funding or big funding is one-on-one meetings with the investors, right? I am completely against this making me stand for 10 minutes or 7 minutes pitching in front of someone who is judging me and deciding whether to take it forward or not, right? So these 7-minute, 10-minute small pitches, etc., are good to raise, 10 lakh, 15 lakh, 20 lakh, etc. And now, the shows are making it more popular. But that's not really how you raise a large amount of funding, right? That's not the approach to raise good quantum of funding. What you need is one-on-one meetings. You need good 1 hour, 15 minutes with the investor. You're sitting in a closed door, in a meeting room, and you're discussing. It's more of discussion than judging me and asking me a lot of questions, right? And that fetches you funding. How do we get that? That only can happen through introductions, right? So what we have to build is that we need to get introductions to the investors, either through incubators, through you as mentors, through other founders. The best introduction can actually be given to us by another founder who has raised a round of capital, who may not be a very large founder of Ola or Uber, right? We need someone who is one step ahead of us. If I'm looking to raise my seed round, a founder who has just raised seed round can actually be my, guide to help me maneuver through this seed round ecosystem per se, right? So founders can fetch us these introductions, and introductions is the way to get one-on-one meetings, and one-on-one meetings is the way to get good amount of funding per se, right? And that is something which we need to actually start focusing on. So to summarize, today there are challenges that first-time founders are facing in raising a round of capital. These challenges can be solved by a combination of 3 things: knowing whether your business is fundable or not, understanding the steps in capital raising, and finally getting to the relevant investor connects. Steps in capital raising, obviously we've gone through it. Relevant investor connects is what you can actually bring to the table. It is very, very critical. And going beyond, the connects and the process is where then you start giving them feedback on valuation, on convertibles, structuring, on reviewing term sheets, etc. Right? Which is the or the masterclass 2.0 is what I would call it, right? So that is what it is. Given that my ears are close to the ground in terms of capital raising, what I'm seeing a very interesting trend, which we have to kind of understand, is not to glamorize funding a lot, because in today's market, boring has become the new exciting thing, or unsexy is the new sexy, right? In today's market, really coming up with businesses that are basic but can give us great revenue, great profitability, which may not always require capital, is becoming the theme, or people have finally started exploring that as well. So whenever we are talking to founders, we have to be very practical in terms of whether you need capital and is VC funding really required. I'm meeting so many founders who are just raising VC because they want to be a VC funded entrepreneur, right? It's cool, right? But the business may not require it. So the journey actually starts from there. That's it from my side today. Happy to connect with you guys and happy to discuss this in more detail. Thank you so much. If we have quick 1 or 2 questions, we can take those.
Anyone? Fantastic sharing of experience.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. It was like a blockbuster movie, real life. One question I have for you, and I'm keen to know your answer.
Sure.
When you tell a startup founder or a group of co-founders that the fundraising is going to take 3 to 6 months, what is the reaction you get?
They're very surprised. They think that it's going to come like within weeks, right? So they're very surprised. They're not prepared for it. A lot of times they come to us when they say that, boss, अगर 2 महीने में पैसा नहीं आएगा तो धंधा बंद करना पड़ेगा, right? And that's actually the wrong time to raise a round of money. The right time to raise is, my business is working, it's happening. I need money to scale, right? I won't have to shut shop, right? That's actually the right time. Also, what is very important is the founder's contribution, right? A lot of people come and say, I need 1 crore. How much money have you put in? I've put in 1 lakh rupees, right? So there's a lot of scope for founders to actually put in capital in their business first, right? And adequately see, business has 2 principles, right? Risk and capital. Risk they have taken, but we are forgetting entrepreneurship में जो capital का requirement है. Founder has to bring in capital. The truth is, if you are running a business today, you have to have a financial background, right? You have to either have the ability to put in money by yourself, or you have to have your own network first to bring in that initial capital. Without that, no one else from outside is going to come and pump in, and that's the unfortunate hard truth, right? So yeah, we have to communicate as is. Yes, sir.
Capex heavy business models are, normally not preferred by VCs.
Yes.
But in such a case, whether VCs will agree if founder is ready to raise a debt for that capex portion.
Yeah, that is. If you are able to raise debt, then great. The challenge is startups, because they don't have operating history, they don't have collateral, and they don't have profitability. Even that debt becomes challenging, right? Today there are, in fact, at IIM Bangalore, I took a very interesting session. I'll share notes, which was beyond equity. Now there are revenue-based financing, bill discount, a lot of things that have come up right now. If you see, we have to explore that. But today, a startup which requires that's where you have to tweak your business model. Where instead of set up capex later, right now, can you contract manufacture it? Can you focus on the technology and patent it and the core recipe and give it to someone to manufacture, right? Later you set up, but can you do that to start with? That will take your capital requirement significantly.
One more question.
Sure.
You said about raising rounds up to round 7 and all that. Is it wise thing to have list of such a long list of shareholders on the cap table?
Very interesting. After a point in time, you don't have a choice. You've raised so many rounds, right? At the very beginning, in the angel stage itself, if you have like 17, 18 investors, that becomes challenging. Typically you have to have, what has happened over the period of years is ticket size has gone down of every individual, and number of individuals on the cap table has increased, especially in the angel stage, right? That becomes challenging, but after a point in time, in the third or the fourth round, consolidation happens, where the fund comes and says that, boss, I want to, clean up the cap table, right? So it is not, ideally, the lesser the number of, shareholders initially you have, better it is, even from an operational standpoint, right? But at some time, you just don't have a choice, or you've become large enough to kind of keep doing that. Right? Great. Cool. Thank you so much. I am going to.
You have also, and amazing session. I think we've all become mentors, partly of the fundraising side also. Thank you very much.
Great. I would like to actually now, call upon Prasad Menon. And Prasad, I would say he is one of also my mentors, so, who helps me with everything. He is currently the CEO of SIBA, which is an incubator, a very large incubator in Navi Mumbai, part of Father Angle College. And he's also the vice president of ISBA. ISBA is basically a body of all incubators put together. And he has, prior to that, he has industry experience, operations experience. And Prasad, I would request you to actually introduce yourself, because there is a slide on that, and take it up from there.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Vikram. Thank you so much. Thank you. First of all, I know it's so difficult with all the curtains drawn. So I was asking, can we open it up? Because all I've been sitting here, my sympathy is for you. Not easy. Very difficult. It's so difficult. I teach youngsters. I teach management students. For sure, 1.5 hours class breaks. They all get fidgety and all that. So there's no way we can get this drawn, right? So at least some lighting, okay, to avoid it. Okay, so let me do it this way, because what founders expect from me. Okay, let that be there for a minute. Okay, I'll give my introduction and then I'll start. Go to the next one. Just to put, because I know, how much time do we have?
We have 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Try to wrap it up in half an hour. For the sake of this audience, because I feel for them, to be honest. Okay, so I've had a journey where I was out of India for half of my life. I worked with various companies and I've came back thanks to making sure we have this vision on Future Group. I worked there for a while. I worked for Reliance Brands for a while. I worked predominantly retail, fashion, technology, and everything, and then gave up all of that and became a kind of went full time into helping our young minds and young students. So for the past 10 years, I've been devoting myself to that, and it also is because probably you reach a stage in life, those who have come from corporate world, where you have earned enough, EMIs have been paid, so you can take that chance. Otherwise, it's difficult to take that jump. Okay. Now today I represent an incubator called Center for Incubation Business Acceleration. This is what the government calls the academic incubator. You saw the slide of Startup India, which they showed in 2015. There were 100 odd incubators, and now there are 700. Right? So we were part of that 100 incubators. 3 of those 100 were SIBA. We had opened one in Goa in 2012. Honorable and our late Manohar Parrikar had inaugurated it when he was the chief minister. Then we opened another one in 2014, another in Goa. Again, the honorable minister inaugurated as defense minister at that time. And then we opened the third one in Mumbai. And all these 3 incubators, these are not for profit. So these are not for profit incubators. This is what you should understand when I'm going to talk. I may have a slightly different perspective than Bhushan. And Bhushan, allow me that. I would love in fact, made a lot of notes there, especially the analogy with Bhagavad Gita. Because I only heard the Krishna part, but you brought the other parts also in, right? So it's fantastic. But I'll bring a different perspective because my skin is with startup. I say I only have one stakeholder. Those are the startup funds. So I'm standing here representing them. And the reason is because although we are a not-for-profit incubator funded by the government, so government is a stakeholder, hosted by an academic institute, run by a charitable trust, so they are the stakeholders, right? So all these are stakeholders, but me, in my capacity, I'm going to represent startup founders, and I'm going to give a perspective which probably is good to be sensitized with. All of you are sitting over here. First of all, I would like to start by congratulating and thanking all of you because you have joined the ecosystem, and we really need this. So a big round of applause for that. Because you see, I think what Startup India also mentioned, right? Job seekers versus job creators. And I always do this, I go into engineering colleges and ask everybody, how many of you would love if you get a placement with TCS with 25 lakhs and above package, everybody stands up. I said, sab log ka haath upar hai. Everybody wants to find a job. I said, if you all are job seekers, who's going to create jobs? Because it is known fact that existing industries are not getting employment at the same pace at which the population is growing, which the number of graduates are coming in. So if a company doubles in its turnover or productivity, employment does not double. So we will see our GDP rise, we will have 5 trillion, 10 trillion economy, but if it's a jobless growth, it's of no consequence. So this is important for all of us to sensitize. So founders for us are really, they have taken that plunge of becoming job creators. So that is for me the first thing. So I would always say, I think, I'll also tell, I think this Bhushan, that what happens with founders is they don't understand what is a coach, a mentor, an advisor. And it's great what you said. You have to help them in that part. What is a coach, advisor? And I'm going to represent only early stage founders away, and I'll give an opportunity for all of you to ask questions. Sorry for my voice. I was in the Startup India capital, Delhi, for last week, giving a 3-day workshop, and I lost my voice because of the cold weather then coming over here. But so if I'm coughing, don't worry. I checked with the doctor. No COVID, nothing. It's only a cough, no nothing. So first is, can you move to the next slide? So one size does not fit all. See why I got only 3 slides for you. So one size does not fit all. What does it mean? It means that there is no one mentoring style and there is no one founder profile. So अगर तुम्हें लगता है, if you are going to mentor 2 founders and you try to use the same methodologies, the same, नहीं होगा. That is one. And second is, one size does not fill at all times. What does it mean? That you may be very good in that stage. After that, you're no longer relevant.
True.
And it is very important for you to know. You have to accept it. तुम founder को क्या accept करा रहे? You have your own. And I think what Bhushan said very good, ability and intent. And Bhushan, it's amazing that you brought that up. Because when you started off, you talked about the matching, right? And I said, where is intent? Finally, I have intent. Intent is very important. तुम्हारा intent क्या है? Why did you sign up for being a mentor? Founders का intent clear है ना? Why did founders start the company? Very clear intent. They have a vision. They did it because they want to take a plunge. They took that risk of entrepreneurship. The risk that our country needs. सारे हमारे बच्चे क्या कर रहे हैं? Everybody is looking for placement jobs. Everybody is going into this inflation of education. Higher degrees. Inflation हो रहा है ना? Graduate काफी नहीं, post graduate वो भी काफी नहीं है. Doctorate. You saw Amitabh Bachchan saying, not add a doctor to your name. So we have to respect that, and that's the reason why we need to be. If they have the right intent. Do we have the right intent? And this is what you all have to ask honestly. When why am I there? And I'll give you an example. I'm new to this ecosystem. I saw that I got, nobody in India can claim they got 2 decades or 3 decades of experience with startups because ours is a very new baby. You saw that in the last 7-8 years, we have seen so many startups come up. So it's a very new phenomena. This whole mentoring, startups, ecosystem, incubators, this stuff, both naya hai. So I'm also new into this ecosystem. So I'll give you, when SIBA Mumbai started, I put on the website of SIBA, right? People apply for incubation, so startups will apply. So apply for being a mentor. Okay? And now this is true story. Apply to be a mentor at SIBA. And we asked the general question, what let's say 80% overlap with MAARG is asking. Expertise, functions, time, वगैरह something. Then I felt, let me invite some of them because they want to become mentors. And I invited them. I had a one-on-one meeting. They felt very keen. 25 years working in access control for a particular, big company like L&T or, the likes of that. I said, great, fantastic mentors. I made them sit in one of our committee where we are scrutinizing applications, right? And then I realized the kind of questions that they were asking from an industry experience point of view, because they were not able to sensitize that the person on the other hand is saying he wanted to, he was not talking about the same industry, he was talking about he wants to change or challenge some sector. The startup is there because he feels that there is a problem and I can solve the problem better than all the other multinationals out there. That is what the startup is saying. So the person on this side with 20-25 years of experience is actually telling him that, hey, this Reliance will enter into this sector. What will you do when Reliance enters? It's like tech startup का सबसे बड़ा Google भी कर सकता है. सब कुछ anything technology जैसे Google can also do it. So simple question is if Google can do it, it would have done already. But the point is, the person the mentor with good intent felt that he's actually helping the startup. But at that moment in time, that did not help the startup. And who were the other members in my committee? All were people who have either worked as a startup, who are either angel investors, who have either, have got some entrepreneurship experience. So they're sensitized. It takes a lot. So I think empathy is what you all need to have as mentors. Startup founders need that. It's not easy to judge a startup on its capability. And the other thing is, I think the startup founder should feel safe with you. Safe in the sense he or she can talk about his or her biggest fears without any hesitation. If you do not have that ability, and you become a very cold face, especially if it's a virtual, asking questions without empathy, that does not help the founder. The founder feels, okay, you all have great intent, but it does not come across like that. So it's very, very important about empathy. And it takes time. It will take time. In your first meeting, absolutely not. Second meeting, somewhat. Third meeting, you'll start getting warmed up. By the time fourth, fifth meeting happens, he or she will also know. Okay. So go to the next step. So there are two things only I say is state of the startup founder. When I talk about state, I'm talking about mental state, anguish, anxiety, everything, and the stage of the founded startup. Because I think someone asked that question, right? Whether at different stages, and I think Bhushan answered correctly. At least you have to be consistent because you're talking about the vision. Right? However, what happens in the journey of the startup, right from idea till traction, scale up and all of that, those journey, every stage, the kind of mentorship that he or she may need will require them to have multiple mentors. And this is why I'm contradicting a little bit on Bhushan. Because I feel that today we cannot claim that, and I always say that as incubators also, हम incubator है, हमारा startup हमारे यहाँ पे आया, graduate हुआ. Today we have an incubatee who has raised, Series A, got acquired by a Norwegian company, and we write it on the SIVA website, our incubatee. But honestly, I will not take credit. We are a small part of their long journey. A small part, an important part, because we were there at the beginning. Once you raise funding, you get a lot of people, you get a lot of friends. At the initial stage of the journey of the entrepreneur, of the founder, that's when you made the difference. Uske baad, once they raise funding, once they have good traction in the market, he spoke about an ICU, portable ICU unit. Once one army hospital, somebody procures it, uske baad mein to you find many people. But to reach that stage, the struggle is with the founder. And I agree with Bhushan what he said. You'll be tempted. Sometimes you find it so easy, you'll be tempted to make decisions for them. The reason is because they come to you because they have some fear and they are scared to make that decision. And they feel that तुम्हारे पास experience है, you are more matured, both by age and by industry. They feel अगर आप बोल रहे हो हाँ, तो मैं करता हूँ. And it is not that it's wrong to give, but what happens is I think exactly what Bhushan said, that you are now creating a position for the founder where he does not have the confidence to make mistakes. You have to give them the confidence to make mistakes. If startup journey में सब कुछ सही हो तो सब लोग startup बनते हैं ना. There is an inherent risk, right? There is a risk involved. And this is what the startup founders need to know also. Now, when I talk about the state of the startup founder, mental state, the state of the startup founders will go through, and this is where that roles of a coach, advisor, and mentor gets a little bit, because what happens is, sometimes they have a comfort level with somebody that they are easily able to articulate to you, but not to you. Both are, you're my coach and you're my mentor, right? But because he's not, the founder does not keep those roles very clearly. You may have very clear as to because you are handling 20 startups, right? But for the founder, you're the karta. So क्या होता है founder? सब कुछ पूछेगा. And I tell you, and this is great also, the accessibility part. That's where the safety comes. That you should not make yourself very inaccessible. As if appointment low, ye karo, wo karo. Just send me a WhatsApp message. If I'm available, I will reach out to you. That's it. You let me know in advance. If it's a decision that is critical, and you're at loggerheads, which has an impact on the business, right? Sir, एक offer आया हुआ है. I want to check quickly with you. It could be an offer from a merger, an offer from a customer, blah blah blah, कुछ भी हो. Reason is he's excited about it and he wants to make the decision. He just wants somebody to say, ठीक है, कर ले. That's it. So now, how are you going to make the founder feel? Because you can, and this is the ability you should have to judge what is exactly, like Bhushan said about the difference between concern and the issue. ये एक art है, which you all have to learn. Listening power. And ये इसमें सबसे बड़ा है, patience होना चाहिए सुनने के लिए. You should have the listening ability. And I'm talking about listening is deep listening. Deep listening is what it says. Deep listening means not just with your mind. I am an open mind. No. So we teach this in the leadership coaching. Open mind is not enough. Open mind matlab kya? I have kind of not going to get any intellectual this thing. I have open mind. I'm open to this. I'm not closed. Open mind is not enough. Open heart bhi chahiye. That is the empathy part. And the final part is open will. Open willingness. Real your willingness. Because willingness kab aata hai? Willingness tab aata hai jab you can celebrate the success of the founders also. And it's not an easy journey. And I tell you this mentorship thing, it's a very fulfilling journey. Very fulfilling. Trust me, both fulfillment milega, but it's not an easy journey. That's why the willingness should come. And I'll tell you without any filters attached that those of you who have joined this movement because you would like to be called a startup mentor or put it in the LinkedIn profile and all of that, great, okay. But if you do not have everything else, then your fulfillment will not come. Because the greatest joy that you're going to get is out of that. And as founders also, I'm telling you now, today I'm telling you, a lot of the founders, they have gone through, I don't even keep count of how many mentoring sessions I've done or how many startups I've founded. I don't keep a count of that because it's not relevant. It's that maybe if let's say I must have done 500 to 1000 startups. इसमें से जो 5 startup का भी अगर success story दिखते हैं, that's what the fulfillment and joy you get. And that joy cannot be equated by anything else. Trust me. And what happens is the joy when they keep on tagging you every time they have an achievement. I won this already last week. Last week there were 2 startups for that Rising Star Award. Sagar, by the way, works in my team. So Rising Star Award, and he, thanks to mentor. It's not that I have been. There are many people in the journey, but what happens is just by him it gives me a lot of satisfaction. It's not about me being recognized or anything. It's not. We don't want to steal away the person's thunder, but it gives you a satisfaction. That is one part. The other part is, now this is the important part. Again, a little bit different. I've invested in 7 startups. Why did I invest? I'm nowhere close to a VC or an angel or seed. Nothing. I invested because these were startups who needed some kind of confidence at that stage. They needed some money. थोड़ा पैसा चाहिए था. तो मैंने बोला ठीक है, don't worry about it. I'll write you a check. Okay, fortunately I had some savings from my stint in corporate world, so I wrote checks for them. And now, honestly, and how I write checks, I did not have any sense of the term sheets and this. I said, just you find through your CAs whatever it is required. I write the check, and let's do it. Okay. What happens is this is showing confidence also. These are small amounts. I'm not talking about big amount. The smallest check I wrote was like 1.5 lakh rupees. Small check. That time, actually, this was a time when the seed fund scheme was not there, Nidhi Triple S, all the money. Today, money is there in abundance. मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ startups को भी, हमको पता है पैसा है, लेकिन पैसा मिलने से कुछ नहीं होता. It's mentors that are needed. Mentors to guide, mentors to help. And if you find, I think somebody asked a question, can you invest? It will be a great confidence that I'm investing in your company. And I think Bhushan said rightfully that's shake. But क्या होता है? Because your relationship with them was as a mentor, it will be very difficult for you to become a shareholder. To invest here because you see an opportunity for whatever growth and exit, that's great. But your role will always be that of a mentor. And I'll tell you another thing that you all need to know. Founders will approach you if at all they see I don't know, Vikrant, you had this earlier, but founders will approach you if they see that some angels have come and have taken, director's seat, right? Because that was part of their deal. So founders will feel, अरे उनके 2 आ रहे हैं और हम लोग सिर्फ 2 है, we are scared. So they would want a mentor. Why don't you make you a director, right? Because then they say, okay, majority आएगा seat में. Have you had this experience before?
Yeah.
So it keeps coming. So I had so many. I said, please. Because it will be impossible for me to sit as a director in all these startups. Yeah. But if at all it is a place where you say that these guys are going to just swallow the startup, they want to make decisions where they want to replace the CEO with their bhanja bhatija जो US से आया हुआ है. ऐसा भी केस है. जो investor ने पैसा डाला, he's got seat on the table. He brought 2 investors in, and then he's got some nephew to come back from the US, and they want to give him some. So they उसको CEO बनाते हैं, and they want to bring that in the agenda of the board meeting. होता है ना? And then they will come to mentors. किसके पास जाएंगे? Remember safety? Who are the people whom they trust? Right? At that time, you'll have to make the call. And I'm just again giving founders perspective because founders are saying it out of their fear and they're trusting you as mentors. Right? The other part is, like I said, stage of founders. You need to know when is that you cannot mentor the startup anymore. So you should know that. I think somebody asked about if the startup is not right. First of all, I would say nothing fails. It's, you either pivot or because your financial stamina khatam ho gaya, office naukri mein gaya. That's okay. In India, they say, right? In India, I think the statistics there. 9 out of 10 startups fail. We have 89,000 startups registered. And if you say 9 out of 10 startups fail, what does failure mean? Today, failure means कि उन्होंने funding raise नहीं किया, उन्होंने 10x scale up नहीं किया. If they are able to survive, sustain, employ 10 people, then it's not a failure. Failure today is equal to not being able to raise funds at times. Perfect example of bootstrapped unicorn कौन सा है? Zoho. Right? So वो एक example है. But there are also perfect examples of well-funded, shut-down startups also, right? So you have both ends of the spectrum. But I think sometimes we have to also play that role when the startups are reaching a point where you feel that they are not mentorable. I think that's what you're saying, right? They're not mentorable. You cannot mentor them anymore because they are unable to do and scale. Then you may have to show and help them with a mirror. मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ, there are no good students and bad students. There are only good teachers and bad teachers. Student होता है. हर एक का level अलग होता है ना. कोई low होता है, कोई average होता है, कोई high होता है. सिखाने का responsibility teacher के ऊपर होता है. Same way mentor, like I told you, one size does not fit all, but you'll get all kind of founders. सारे हर तरह के हर flavor के founders मिलने वाले हैं. It's really, you have to train yourself. Listening. Okay? Deep listening. Vikant, I'll stop, I'll take questions better. Right? Let me take questions from all of you. There's a lot I can talk about, but I felt it's best I take questions. And I also, let me tell you, again, I represent more early stage founders. Although in SIBA there is something called business acceleration, BA stands for that. But honestly, we are more the CI, Center for Incubation, rather than business acceleration. Acceleration we have done a few, but उसमें मजा नहीं होता, to be honest. Incubation में मजा है because you're actually showing the delta, right? The big delta happens in the beginning. Okay.
So
any questions?
we also take into account startups which have only started with one product, okay, which is doing very well, but somehow when they go to when they approach VCs or any angel investors, the usual feedback that they get is, what your product you're selling is abundantly available in the offline market, modern trade, general trade, even on Amazon. So what is it that you're going to bring something, something new, something additional. Sometimes what happens is, of course, innovations out of the box, drastic innovations will not be so plentifully available, but there would be product with some different orientation in terms of brand communication, what he's trying to, what kind of target market, target customer he wants to cater to. So do we also take such startups into acceleration?
See, you don't see. I think. I'm sorry to, but I think the question fundamentally is not important, right? At that stage when you're trying to please an investor.
Okay.
VC के tune में dance करना is actually, because I think like Vikrant mentioned, first, are you talking to the right people? If they are going to bring in example, like we have a startup who's going to challenge oral care. He's going to challenge oral care. अभी oral care में कौन है? Oral B है, Colgate है, so many big players, no? And he wants to challenge it. If I go to an investor, right, who's investing in a big FMCG brands, of course he's going to say, hey, distribution ka game hai, ye hai. People are influenced by Shark Tank a lot these days also. But I think fundamentally is like, I think the vision, what is it, the reason to be? And I always say, what is the unfair advantage that these founders have? And they all have an unfair advantage, but kya hai? Technology. They have that advantage of technology, appetite for risk, rapid prototyping. If a Colgate-Palmolive wants to launch a completely new way of oral hygiene, वो नहीं कर पाएगा. उनको 18 months का दिखाना पड़ता है, concept, approval, test, customer feedback, pilot, market study, blah blah. करते वो capex का budget बन जाएगा. और उसके startup क्या करेगा? 18 दिन में let's do it, let's try, let's pick up. One area over here, let's do a test. Let's make some samples, import from China. Start karo. कर सकते हैं ना? That's the answer.
Prashant, I think one of the thing which I'm seeing in interacting with the startups is, other than your access to your gyan and then obviously your access to you can take them to the fund managers. Another thing is the networks. So you are coming from an industry, they know that you can perhaps open up C-level doors much faster than what if they try it of their own. What is the right balance? When should you really do it, and when should you really open up the doors for them? And they expect that you should be able to close the deals. Any advice?
Fantastic. I think you're absolutely right. We as an incubator, we always say, you come to us, the question, I may not have the answer, but I know who has the answer. So I can direct you to that person. And that is, because these startup founders are young. Inka social capital utna nahi hai. They don't know that many people. Every, 21, 22-year-old, how many people has he met in the industry? Or so the mentors, all of you, have your own network because of, whether your businesses, through your businesses or through your work, you have your network. So I would say, to answer your question, the moment you have created that safe area, you should open it up completely. Okay. The only difference is you have to also protect your network. I always say that because this network is not just exclusively for one founder; it's for many others. So if he says, "Usse mujhe purchase order dila de," then it's not. Then you're spoiling your network respects you because you're not reaching out for a dhanda.
Sale, yes.
We have to be very careful. So that is where I've always said, if you do that, then you'll spoil your network. Ek founder push hua, but then you cannot go back to that network again. They'll say, "Acha, uska call hai, startup ke saath bol raha hai, put a session and he wants me to meet the startup founder. I'll not meet because he's asking for business." Hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you.
Any more questions? End of the day, tired? No. Waiting for the break?
Right.
Okay, yeah. I think we should wrap it up then.
Wonderful. So a few more minutes. So round of applause for all of us have to give the startups the confidence to fail, only then they will succeed. Thank you for this.
That's so true. That's so true. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so before we, Vikrant, a token of our appreciation for the Startup India team, Nazia. This way also. Shambhavi, please. This brings us to the end. Thank you very much, all of you, for your patience. I'm not going to come in between networking IT. Just one more round of thank you. Shambhavi, Nazia, thank you very much. And all the startup team members who are working behind the scenes. To our session givers, Bhushan, Vikrant and Prasad, thank you very much for all the nuggets of wisdom. And to Team's own startups, Shubhda, Priya, and all the others who have worked behind the scene. And thank you all to the mentors here in this room and all the mentors who are there with us online. Thank you very much once again. A round of applause for the entrepreneurs and the mentors. Thank you very much. We'll break for networking. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Just one before we leave, maybe one group photograph. So we will accommodate ourselves here and probably shoot from outside. So all of you, Prasad,
recording
group photo. If you can.
Oh, there you go.
So we'll have to back ourselves towards the center.